Hey, welcome to the very first episode of Dan's On Site. I am Dan Dutton. On my left is Dan Goley. Do you think people know how we came up with the name or no? Before we get into the show, we want to introduce ourselves. So, Dan, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Dan Goley, lifelong Omahan, born and raised here. And one of the reasons Dan and I kind of talked earlier on, kind of some history on what we do and how we got into real estate and kind of how this whole show would go. And so a lot of the conversations that we had was, personally, it's kind of interesting to me how I've watched the city grown from, I grew up just north of Westroads, and the city has, what used to be in the western part has really grown. And so, that has allowed me to kind of get some interest on some of the businesses in town and the buildings and how the world is grown itself, and not just nationally, but state of Nebraska and Omaha as well. And so our career has kind of grown with that. I've been licensed for 25 years now. Worked for a local firm, and then for 5 years worked for a national investment firm, and came back into the world of Omni Partners, which is now known as Omni Partners. Dan and I have kind of worked together for a while and decided to be exclusively one, and that's kind of how we've grown. And so that's kind of how my professional career has gone. Individually, we do some charity work, one of which is a disease known as ALS, or commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. I lost my dad in 2004, and my family and others created what is known as ALS in the Heartland. And what we do is provide free services to those in need and battling the disease. And so that's been a big love of my life, certainly, and very gratifying to watch it grow to its 14th year now. So that's pretty much me personally.
Well, so I am originally a Lincoln guy, down the road from Omaha. Live just on the edge of Omaha now in Gretna. Have a family, a wife, and three little kids. So my personal time, I spent a lot of coaching baseball, coaching soccer, which I never played. So I'm not sure how I ended up with a soccer coach, but I've been in business for 17 years. A lot of that time was spent in brokerage. I did take a little bit of a detour at one point, got into asset management, and had a $250 million portfolio, and I oversaw brokerage and property management teams, and then got it back into brokerage, and that's when Dan and I hooked up. Originally, his name was actually Dave, and we had him change his name because Dan sounded better than Dan and Dave, but anyway. I wonder if jokes carry with the audience. Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Okay.
We're learning as we go.
Give us a break. It's the first episode. So a little bit about the show. We wanted to, obviously we're all in a new age here. The coronavirus has changed the world for, maybe a short time, maybe a long time. And we wanted to create a way to reach out, give back. And one of the ideas that we had was creating a podcast, YouTube show, but we want to do something different. So we've obviously built our careers in real estate, and this is going to be a real estate show through and through. But a lot of real estate shows, they take one segment, one niche, and focus on that. It might be economic development, but economic development only for the town you're coming from. Or it might be about brokers and broker development. Or it might just be about restaurants, or on and on and on. We want to do everything. We want to cover it all. We want to cover what's happening in Omaha, but what's happening in Des Moines, Kansas City, Dallas, everywhere. And then, brokers, we're going to give hopefully lots of tips about brokerage. One thing Dan didn't mention is he's director of brokerage here at Omni. And so combined with our experience, I think we can offer some tips back to the brokerage community. We'd really love to sponsor some discussion on Facebook and other places on the economic development, the broker stuff, tenants moving around, all of that stuff. Goley, what else will we have?
Really, it's not really. We're going to be more of the hosts essentially, and so the whole idea is to have anybody we bring on, those that Dan has mentioned, really be their show and kind of it's interesting in any industry, you hear slang words. We say LOI or RFP and the normal, well, that's just normal conversation with us. Not everybody knows that. And so what we want to have is, maybe some engineer, for example, that takes a piece of farm ground that's here and turns it into a neighborhood housing association, and there's words and slang that go along with that. And so as people drive by, especially in Omaha and watching the growth, we want to educate the public from our eyes and bring in those people in our industry to do that.
So basically what you're saying is interviews. We're going to interview everybody and anybody we can that's related to the real estate market. Potential tenants, businesses that can be tenants, their perspective on being a tenant. We're going to talk to buyers, sellers, landlords. Landlords, I think, offer a great perspective on the difficulties of leasing up property, and not just any landlord. We're going to talk to retail landlords, office landlords, everybody. So basically anybody and everybody, we're going to try to bring on every week. We're going to try to bring on somebody different to interview. We actually have our first interview lined up for in a couple days that will hopefully go up next week. It's a client of ours. It's a successful tenant who I think will bring some really interesting perspectives about his business and not only what he's going through with COVID, but what he's going through kind of worldwide, if you will.
Well, and you mentioned COVID, and I think that's kind of where the theme of some of this started, is that, when you see the news or publications or whoever it is, all these messages are more globally. And so what you hear is, retail, which we do a lot of, is just in, terrible dire straits. And Dan and I had a call this morning with someone who's, they're thriving in their market. Or they, so we want to be able to at least let people know what the true message is, not just with Omaha, but through the whole region.
So this being the first show, no interview today, but keep track of us because we will, from this point forward, pretty much have interviews. I don't know if this will be a weekly show, but it'll try to be a weekly show. We'll try to have interviews almost every week. But before we go today, I thought, Dan, maybe we could talk a little bit about how COVID's affected us. So, you and I have both been around. We saw 08. Now we're seeing COVID time. Tell us a little bit about your experiences going through COVID.
Well, the first thing we did on a strategy is be proactive. And so what Dan mentioned 08, and he and I have had multiple conversations about how we compare the time in the real estate world in 08 and the time in COVID. And you can talk to 10 people and probably get 10 different ideas, and that's fine. For us individually, what we saw is in 08, for example, banks were coming in and wanting to take over business buildings or shopping centers. And then we also saw tenants that absolutely just couldn't make it and just folded the tent without any other discussion, and landlords were allowing them to do so. What we're noticing now with COVID is a lot of those building owners are going to their banks, and the banks are going to interest only and to help them out. And so it's allowed us to go back in and work with the tenants, knowing that we have a little bit of flexibility to really understand what they need, how much time they need. Is it within the PPP of the initial 60 days? Is it 6 months or 9 months down the road? Is it a year? We have some that just can't survive, that are based on conferences and trade shows throughout the whole nation that are canceled for the rest of the year. They just can't simply survive. The one that Dan mentioned that we're going to talk to on Friday, he actually is in an industry where, if you read a lot of publications, will not survive. However, he has been through it. He's a seasoned person. He understands the hurdles that are there, and he's challenged himself to survive. And now we're talking about expanding, which is great.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing is restaurants, right? Because we all, when this all started, we looked at restaurants and we're like, they got to shut down. They can't operate. And now, as we just were on a call this morning where we were talking about Raising Cane's and Popeye's Chicken and how they may actually come out of this stronger than they went into it. We talked about another restaurant group that is basically changing from a fast casual only concept to now fast casual plus drive-through, because the few locations they did have with drive-thrus have actually exceeded expectations to this time. We talked the other day about how, delivery and curbside business has become such a big deal for all restaurants. And, it used to be, I'm not aware of any place you could order liquor, order drinks, and pick it up to go. Just put a lid and a straw in it, and I'll take it in my car and drive home.
Kind of counterproductive.
Right.
If you think about it.
But now, not only is that standard practice, it looks like it may actually have legs and last a while. And then you talk about restaurants who were never drive-through and maybe just beginning to do curbside. Will they actually start to add drive-thrus? We had a tenant of ours at a shopping center we did the leasing who's never ever had drive-through, doesn't have drive-through now, is now actually saying, I need drive-through at all my future locations. So it's really interesting, and that kind of leads us to, Dan, any guesses? I mean, how do we exit this? How do we come out of this?
It's nuts because you see and you hear the world of 50. We were on phase 2. We're entering phase 2, and Dan mentions, I'll use restaurant as an example. They're going to open at 50%, and then I talked to a couple office users yesterday. One of them's not opening till September of this year, and then you turn on the TV and see how the stock market's doing, and we're right back up pre-COVID levels. So it just doesn't align itself. What does that mean? I have no idea. I'm not trying to figure out the stock market here, but what I am seeing is that there's a desire for people to start opening. There's people that want to start going. There are some actually that may downsize, may reduce some of their overhead by taking the office template that they have, and then maybe they're in 10,000 square feet now and 5,000 will work. So I think what's going to happen is the world's kind of reset itself. When is that? I think it depends on the industry. Dan, we'll go back to restaurants again just because we had a lot of strong calls lately. A lot of them really want to be kicking that in. We have one office user that's talking about, taking their IT platform and really expanding it, getting better at the Zoom conferences, expanding on what those are, dropping in, the Excel spreadsheets or any other, used to be, on-site flipping through, through pages on the site. And now that's going to be more of an enhanced version. So it's all I think we're all going to get through this. I don't think we will see some casualties, but I don't think it'll be anywhere near what 2008 was.
So we're going to wrap up this show here pretty quick, but we're going to try to wrap up every show with a story of the week, if you will. And we're going to tell a story from our past dealings, then, I guess just try to add some experience to everybody out there. So the first one is I'm going to go back way early in my career. So I was probably a year-ish into real estate, maybe a year and a half into real estate. So that would have put me 25-ish years old. I was working with a Dollar General rep at the time who wanted to relocate a store. Found a couple sites. He loved one of the sites. We went and looked at it. He said, perfect site, let's go after it. Here's a preferred developer. They use preferred developers, take down sites, build the buildings, and lease it back to Dollar General. And so we found this preferred developer. He had this preferred developer. I met with the preferred developer. We got the site under contract. Turned out there was enough land that we could do 4 or 5 bays along with the Dollar General. And I was just excited as could be. I thought my first development project, I'm getting the sale, I'm getting the Dollar General lease, I'm getting 2 or 3 other leases right away. It's all going to happen on closing because we had tenants kind of starting to fill up the bays too. We get to closing day, and the preferred developer gets shaky legs. This is really their first experience doing anything like this, their first experience doing development. I'm not even exactly sure how they got tied in with Dollar General to begin with, but what they needed was somebody to come in, show them the confidence, kind of show them the strategy, show them that the job can get done. I actually drove to Norfolk on the day of closing to try to save the deal. And long story short, I couldn't save the deal. And, I always say it would have made a difference in my life at the time if I got the deal done. Of course, would have made a difference long term. Probably not. It wasn't that amazing of a deal. But what always sticks with me was it was a great deal for the preferred developer. It was a great deal then. It would still been considered a great deal today. My lack of experience led me to a position where I couldn't put the pieces together. And so I've tried to take that experience as I move forward through my career and just think about, how I can make a difference in your customers, your clients' eyes, make a difference in their lives to move forward. So anyway, that's my short story of the week. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, we really appreciate your time watching this. Please share this with anyone. We're certainly committed to all this, and we certainly hope, and our plan is to bring all kinds of new information to all of you.
So find us on Facebook, Dan's On Site on Facebook, YouTube channel, Dan's On Site. Go to YouTube, comment, subscribe. All that stuff the YouTubers tell your kids to do. I know they tell my kids to do that. So
they already do it.
I'm just repeating it.
Pretty sure they do it.
If you see weird comments from my kids, just ignore them, please. Anyway, so Facebook, Dan's On Site, YouTube, Dan's On Site, iTunes. So this will be a YouTube show. We're also going to podcast it, so you'll be able to find it on all your podcasts, wherever you get podcasts on. Obviously, help us out by reviewing, subscribing, liking our stuff. And then, like I said earlier, we want to sponsor discussions. So if you have thoughts, if you have a story you want us to share as story of the week, we'd love to hear it. So, and guests, if you have guest ideas, we'd love to hear that too. So in the meantime, Dan and I can be reached at ddutton, DDUTTON, or dgoley, DGOALEY, at omnepartners.com. And we will look forward to talking to everybody soon. Thank you.